All right, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into a world that's equal parts fascinating and kind of scary cybersecurity.
Yeah, the online world.
It can feel
It
it.
can feel like the Wild West out there sometimes.
Totally. And you know me, I love digging into this stuff.
Right.
But even, I gotta admit, all this talk about hackers and data breaches can make you feel a little, you know, vulnerable.
I get it. It can definitely feel overwhelming.
It does, which is why you're the perfect person to guide us through this digital landscape.
I'll do my best.
So let's jump right in. No need to dip our toes in. Let's go straight to the deep end.
Okay, let's do it.
What kind of cyber dangers are actually out there? We've all heard the horror stories, but who are these attackers?
Yeah.
Are we talking like tech-savvy teenagers in their basement, or is it something way more organized?
Yeah. Well, get ready for a reality check, because it's almost never the lone wolf scenario anymore.
Really?
Yeah, these sources paint a picture that's way more complicated and honestly, way more unsettling.
Okay, so like what are we talking about here?
We're talking about these sophisticated hacking groups, often state-sponsored, with resources that could rival some small countries.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
State-sponsored? You're telling me there are actual governments out there, like, actively engaging in cyber warfare?
Absolutely, and it's not just about stealing government secrets anymore either.
So what is it about, then?
We'll take this for example. Seguridad4.pdf, this one right here, dives into how Chinese hackers, and we're talking highly organized groups here, are increasingly targeting North American companies.
Okay, so, like, what kind of companies?
They're going after businesses in sectors like technology, aerospace, even pharmaceuticals, anything with valuable intellectual property, really.
Wow, so it's not just about, like, disrupting systems or anything. It's economic espionage.
It really is.
On a massive scale.
It is, with incredibly high stakes. And it's not just China we're talking about either.
No. Who else is involved?
This report also mentions a group they call Dragonfly, which has been linked to cyber attacks on energy companies globally.
Energy companies.
Yeah, scary stuff. Their weapon of choice is this nasty piece of malware called Havex.
Havex, okay.
And it can actually infiltrate industrial control systems, the ones that manage things like power grids and pipelines.
Okay, now that's terrifying. We're not just talking about stolen credit card numbers here. We're talking about the potential to, like, disrupt entire nations. This is where I start to feel like I need to unplug everything in my house.
I understand the feeling.
Seriously.
But before you resort to living off the grid, let's look at another example.
Okay.
This one's from Seguridad3.pdf. Remember that massive attack on Microsoft Exchange servers a while back?
Yeah, who could forget that?
Well, this report links it to a Chinese affiliated group known as Hafnium.
Hafnium, okay.
And what's really interesting here is they didn't just target governments or big corporations. They went after small businesses, schools, even nonprofits.
So basically, anyone and everyone is fair game in this digital Wild West.
Pretty much.
But here's my question. If these attackers are already this advanced, what hope do we have?
It's a valid concern.
It's scary. I mean, this Hafnium group, they use these incredibly sophisticated techniques to exploit vulnerabilities that even Microsoft didn't know existed.
And that's where it gets even more unsettling. Seguridad6.pdf actually reveals that some cybercriminals are incorporating artificial intelligence and machine learning into their attacks now.
AI.
Yeah, AI. We're talking about AI that can learn to identify and exploit vulnerabilities faster than any human could.
Oh, wow. It's like AI versus AI. It's like something out of a sci-fi movie. This is making me rethink all my online habits. So knowing that these threats are getting more complex, more frequent, more sophisticated, what can we as everyday people do to protect ourselves?
That's the big question, right?
It is. I mean, is it even possible to stay ahead of these digital outlaws?
Well, don't worry. It's not all doom and gloom.
Oh, okay, good.
While the threats are real and constantly evolving, so are the defenses.
Okay.
And thankfully, you don't need to be a tech whiz to implement them.
So there's hope.
There is. There are simple, practical steps everyone can take to make themselves less appealing targets.
Okay, so less appealing targets.
Exactly.
I like it.
But before we dive into those, let's first unpack a fundamental concept in cybersecurity: the CIA triad.
The CIA triad. Okay, that does sound a bit like we're about to get inducted into a secret society of spies.
Right.
What's the secret handshake? No secret handshake, but I'm ready to learn the secret code.
Well, it's not exactly a secret code, but there is a crucial concept at the heart of cybersecurity, and it's summed up in those three letters: confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Okay, so CIA, not the CIA. Got it. Okay, break it down for me. Confidentiality, I'm guessing that's like keeping sensitive information, under wraps.
That's it. Think of it as like The digital equivalent of your most prized possessions.
Yeah.
Passwords, financial data, those embarrassing childhood photos you don't want anyone to ever find.
Ooh, yeah. Those are locked away for sure.
Confidentiality ensures that only those with authorized access can get their hands on that information.
Okay, so it's like the digital equivalent of like locking your diary, hiding the key, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
I can get on board with that. What about integrity? That sounds like a pretty important principle for both the real world and the digital world.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Integrity means ensuring that the information remains accurate and untampered with.
Okay, I see.
So imagine for a second someone hacking into a hospital database and changing medical records or messing with the code of a self-driving car.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a breach of integrity with some potentially catastrophic consequences.
Yeah, that's where it gets really real. Wow. And lastly, we have availability.
Right.
I'm assuming this one is all about making sure systems and information are accessible like whenever we need them.
You got it. So think about a situation where you're trying to access your bank account online, but the website is completely down.
Ugh, the worst.
Or you can't get through to customer service because their phone lines are totally jammed.
Right.
That could be an attack on availability.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Remember those DDoS attacks we talked about earlier?
Yes,
SecurityDad6.pdf explains how they can basically flood a website with so much traffic that it just crashes, making it totally unavailable to legitimate users.
Oh, wow. So it's like a digital traffic jam.
Exactly.
That reminds me of when I tried to get tickets to that music festival last summer and the entire ticketing site just crashed.
No.
It was chaos. And now I'm thinking, wait a minute, was that a DDoS attack?
It could have been, yeah.
Wow, I never even thought about it that way. Speaking of chaos, we've talked about the CIA triad. We've talked about these really high-level attacks.
Right, yeah.
What about those everyday threats that we face online? What are the most common ways that these cyber criminals try to, trick us? What are we looking for?
That's such a good question. And that's where understanding different types of cyber attacks and the motivations behind them becomes so crucial. I mean, we've touched on DDoS attacks. We've talked about malware, like that Havoc Trojan we mentioned.
Right.
But phishing is another really big one that everyone needs to be aware of.
Oh, phishing.
It's a social engineering tactic
Okay.
where attackers essentially try to trick you into giving away your personal information.
Oh, right. Like those emails that say you won the lottery or your bank needs you to verify your account details.
Yeah.
People still fall for those.
All the time. And they're getting more sophisticated.
Really?
Oh, yeah. SecureDad3.pdf actually goes into some detail about all the different forms phishing can take these days.
Okay, so like what?
Well, there's smishing.
Smishing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Smishing, that's SMS phishing through text messages.
Oh, through text. Okay.
And then there's phishing, which is phishing over the phone.
Yeah. Wow, they have a name for everything. So smishing, phishing.
And it's all the same goal, though, to trick you into giving up that sensitive information.
So sneaky. It's like they say, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right?
Exactly.
But phishing aside, what about ransomware? That's been all over the news lately.
Yeah.
And it sounds absolutely terrifying.
It can be devastating, especially for businesses.
Oh, really?
Ransomware is basically a type of malware that encrypts your files or completely locks you out of your computer.
So you can't access anything?
Nope.
Oh, my God.
And then the attackers demand a ransom, usually in cryptocurrency, to give you back control.
So you're basically held hostage by your own data. That's intense. But seriously, what's the impact of these attacks? Is it really that widespread?
It's a significant problem, and it's costing businesses and individuals billions of dollars each year.
Billions. Wow.
Yeah. SecurityDad6.pdf cites some pretty alarming statistics about the financial impact of ransomware attacks, particularly on small businesses.
Small businesses.
Many of them just simply can't afford to pay the ransom.
Right.
And even if they do, there's no guarantee that the attackers will actually release their data.
It's a lose-lose situation then.
Pretty much, yeah.
But who are these people behind these attacks? Are we talking about disgruntled teenagers, organized crime rings, or something else entirely?
It's actually a whole spectrum of actors, each with their own motives and levels of sophistication.
Okay.
Like we discussed earlier, state-sponsored groups are a growing threat, especially in the realm of espionage and economic warfare.
Right, like those Chinese hacking groups we were talking about, targeting North American companies.
Exactly.
Wow, but it's not always about money or political gain, is it?
No, not always. Some hackers are driven by ideology or maybe a desire to kind of expose wrongdoing.
Okay.
We call those individuals or groups hacktivists.
Activists, okay.
They might target organizations they perceive as being unethical or corrupt, aiming to expose their practices.
So it's almost like a form of digital vigilantism in a way.
In a way, yeah.
Wow. So it's not just about protecting our data, it's also about protecting ourselves from those who might want to use that information to manipulate or control us.
You got it.
This is all starting to feel a bit like a digital minefield out there.
It's a complex landscape for sure.
Yeah.
And as our reliance on technology grows, so do the vulnerabilities.
That's a great point.
That's why it's more crucial than ever to stay informed and adopt a really proactive approach to cybersecurity.
Okay, proactive, I like it. So how do we do that?
Well, there's one concept I want to touch on that's gaining a lot of traction in the cybersecurity world right now: zero trust.
Zero trust. Okay, that sounds intriguing. Is that like a digital detox for organizations?
Not quite. It's more of a security framework that assumes no user or device can be trusted by default.
Okay, so like even within an organization.
Even within an organization.
Okay, interesting.
Seguridad 7.pdf explains how, in the past, security was all about building a really strong perimeter, like a firewall, around your network.
Right, like keeping everyone out.
Yeah. But with zero trust, it's about verifying every single access attempt, regardless of where it's coming from.
So it's less about building walls and more about setting up checkpoints throughout the entire, like, digital landscape?
You got it. It's like having multiple layers of security, always verifying who's trying to access what.
Multiple layers of security. I like that. That makes a lot of sense, especially as more and more work is done remotely and data is accessed from multiple devices and locations.
Exactly. It's essential these days.
It's like having a digital bodyguard who's always watching your back.
I like that analogy.
But in all seriousness, with all this talk about sophisticated hackers, state-sponsored attacks, threats evolving faster than ever, it's easy to feel overwhelmed.
For sure.
So let's get practical. What are some concrete steps that we can take right now to protect ourselves in this digital age?
Don't worry, you don't need to become a tech wizard overnight.
Okay, good, because I don't have time for that.
No, there are some very simple, practical steps everyone can take to significantly reduce their risk.
Okay, I like it. Simple and practical.
And thankfully, Seguridad 3.pdf offers a really great starting point.
Okay, Seguridad3.pdf. I've got it open.
Perfect.
So what are we looking at?
Let's start with the basics. Accounts and devices.
All right, accounts and devices it is, so let's talk passwords. All right, accounts and devices it is, so let's talk passwords. I have a feeling I know where this is going.
You probably do, but it's important enough to repeat. Strong, unique passwords for every single account you have.
Okay, yeah.
That's the cornerstone of good cybersecurity hygiene.
It's like the number one thing everyone says, right?
It really is, and for good reason.
Okay, so strong, unique passwords, check. What else?
Well, once you've got those Fort Knox level passwords, you need a safe place to keep them. Because let's be real, trying to remember dozens of those complex passwords is a recipe for disaster.
Oh, tell me about it. I've got like a million passwords.
Exactly. So that's where password managers come in.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask about those.
Seguridad 3.pdf suggests using a password manager, and honestly, they can be lifesavers.
Really? See, password managers have always felt a bit like a black box to me.
I get it. A lot of people feel that way.
But they're safe?
They are generally very safe, especially the reputable ones.
Okay, so which ones are those?
Well, the report actually mentions Bitwarden as a great free option.
Bitwarden, okay.
And then there are plenty of other paid options out there too, each with its own set of features.
Okay, so we'll add those to our list. Now, what about two-factor authentication? It's like everyone's talking about 2FA these days. Is it really all it's cracked up to be?
It's not just hype. It really is a game changer for security.
Okay, good. So it lives up to the hype.
2FA basically adds that extra layer of protection by requiring you to provide two forms of identification to access an account.
So even if someone manages to steal your password, they still need that second factor to actually get in.
Exactly. It's like having a second lock on your door.
I like it. A digital deadbolt. So strong passwords, a password manager, and 2FA enabled everywhere. Check, check, check. What about our devices themselves, though? How do we keep those safe?
That's where good device hygiene comes in. And it might seem obvious, but keeping your software up to date is honestly one of the simplest yet most effective ways to protect yourself.
Really?
Those updates often include crucial security patches that fix vulnerabilities hackers could exploit.
Okay, so no more ignoring those pesky update notifications then.
No more ignoring those. They're important. And this goes for all your devices, by the way, not just your computer. Phones, tablets, even your smart refrigerator if it connects to the internet.
Oh my goodness, everything.
Everything.
Okay, all right. Now that you mention it, my smart TV did try to download an update the other day. I may have accidentally unplugged it.
I won't tell anyone.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so while we're talking about data, let's talk about where's the safest place to keep it all? Is it on the cloud or locally on our devices?
The age-old debate. Cloud versus local. It's a question a lot of people have.
It is. It's a tough one.
It is. And SecurityAd3.pdf actually suggests that in many cases, reputable cloud storage providers actually offer better security than storing everything locally.
Really? See, that's surprising to me. I always thought keeping my data on my own hard drive was like the safest bet.
It's a common misconception.
Oh.
Think about it, though.
Right.
What happens if your computer crashes, gets stolen, or falls victim to one of those nasty ransomware attacks we talked about? You could lose everything.
That's true.
With cloud storage, your data is typically stored across multiple servers, making it a lot harder to lose.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the cloud provider itself being hacked? I mean, we've all heard those horror stories of these massive data breaches.
Definitely a valid concern. But you have to remember that these really reputable cloud providers, we're talking Google, Microsoft, those big names, they invest massive resources into securing their data centers.
So they have teams of people working on this.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking state-of-the-art security measures, teams of experts constantly monitoring for threats.
So it's like choosing a bank with a highly secure vault over stashing your cash under the mattress.
Exactly. But just like you wouldn't walk around flashing your bank statements to everyone, you got to be mindful of how you're sharing data in the cloud.
Right. So no more sharing my passwords then. Good to know.
Exactly. Use those secure sharing settings, set strong passwords for your cloud accounts, and be very wary of phishing attempts that target your cloud credentials.
Good point. Okay, speaking of the internet more broadly, let's talk about online safety in general. What are some good habits to get into?
Well, the report has a few good tips on this.
Okay, let's hear 'em.
Always double-check websites for that HTTPS in the address bar.
Okay, HTTPS, so the S is important.
That S stands for secure.
Got it.
It means your connection to that website is encrypted, so that's really
Well,
important.
switched it, okay.
And when you're using public Wi-Fi, like at a coffee shop or the airport,
Right, which is like all the time.
exactly, consider using a VPN.
A VPN, okay, so like a virtual private network.
Yeah, it's like a secret tunnel for your internet traffic. Makes it much harder for snoopers to see what you're doing.
Okay, so I'm basically invisible.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And SecurityAd3.pdf actually recommends some specific VPN providers like TunnelBear and Proton VPN.
Cute names, I like it.
I know, right?
Okay, before we wrap up our little cybersecurity boot camp here,
Right.
there's one more area I wanted to touch on: social media.
Yeah, social media.
It's great for staying connected, sharing cat videos,
Of course, cat videos are crucial.
but it also feels like a potential minefield for security risks.
It's true. Social media can be a bit of a double-edged sword. Fantastic tool for communication, for sharing,
For sure.
but it presents some unique security challenges. I mean, think about it. Every post, every comment you make, it all adds to this kind of digital footprint you leave behind.
It's true. And let's be honest, we've all shared maybe a little too much information online at some point.
It happens.
So what can we do to protect our privacy and security on social media specifically?
Well, the report highlights a few really key things to keep in mind. First of all, be super mindful of what you share.
Okay, so think before you post.
Exactly. Especially when it comes to things like your home address, phone number, that kind of sensitive stuff.
Right, that makes sense. Don't want to make it too easy for them.
Exactly. Second, review your privacy settings regularly. Because these social media platforms are constantly updating their policies, it's important to stay on top of that.
Oh, that's a good point, because I never even look at those. They're so long.
I know they're so long and boring, but it's important.
Okay, privacy settings, check. Anything else?
And finally, enable two-factor authentication for those social media accounts as well.
So just like with everything else, double lock it.
Exactly. That extra layer of security makes a huge difference. Got it. Okay, so lock down those privacy settings, enable 2FA, and maybe lay off sharing those vacation photos while I'm still on vacation, just to be safe.
Always a good idea.
Okay, what else? Anything else I need to know about?
Well, there's one more aspect of cybersecurity that often gets overlooked, and it might surprise you: physical security.
Physical security. I thought we were talking about the digital world here.
I know, right? But think about it. What happens if you leave your laptop unattended in a public place, or your phone gets stolen? All those digital security measures we talked about kind of go out the window if someone can just physically access your devices.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
It's easy to forget.
So it's like basic common sense still applies even in this digital age.
Absolutely. Don't leave your devices unattended, especially in public, and be mindful of things like shoulder surfing. Shoulder surfing.
Yeah, when someone tries to peek at your screen while you're entering sensitive information.
Oh, yeah, like at the ATM or something.
Exactly.
Sneaky, sneaky.
Here's a surprising one from the reports. Be cautious about using public USB charging ports.
Public charging ports? What's the danger there? Those seem pretty safe.
You would think so, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they can actually be tampered with to steal your data.
Wait, really?
It's called juice jacking. So if you need to charge your phone on the go, it's safer to use a portable battery pack or just find a regular wall outlet.
Juice jacking. Wow, I did not know about that.
It's one of those things you don't think about until it's too late.
I'll definitely be more careful about those public charging stations from now on, that's for sure.
Wow, this has been an eye-opening deep dive.
It has. We've covered everything from state-sponsored hackers to the importance of strong passwords and even the dangers of public USB ports. It's a lot.
That's a lot to take in.
It really is. But, I feel like I've gone from cybersecurity zero to hero in the span of like an hour.
That's the goal.
I'm going to be putting a lot of this advice into practice right away, that's for sure.
I love to hear that. And remember, cybersecurity is a journey, not a destination. It's all about building those good habits, staying informed, being proactive. And remember, even with the best precautions in place, incidents can still happen.
So it's not just about building up those defenses. It's also about knowing what to do if those defenses are breached.
Exactly. And that's why having a plan is so crucial. Seguridad 3.pdf actually highlights the importance of having an incident response plan.
Okay, so it's like a fire drill, but for my digital life.
Exactly. It outlines the steps you should take if you think you've been targeted.
So if I think something's wrong, what do I do? Who do I call? The Ghostbusters of cybersecurity.
Well, maybe not the Ghostbusters, but the report does suggest identifying external cybersecurity experts in advance.
Okay, so like a digital cleanup crew.
Exactly. These are the professionals who can really help you navigate the aftermath of an attack and hopefully minimize the damage.
Okay, well that makes me feel a little bit more prepared.
Glad to hear it.
You mentioned a real-world example earlier, the one that really drives home why having a plan, even for smaller organizations, is so important.
Oh, absolutely. So Seguridad 3.pdf actually describes this case where this nonprofit organization thought they were too small to be targeted, suffered this really significant data breach.
Oh, no.
And it was all because of lax social media security.
Social media?
Wow. They hadn't implemented basic security measures, things like two-factor authentication, strong passwords for their social media accounts, and they hadn't really educated their employees about phishing scams.
It's so easy to overlook those things.
It really is, but it only takes one oversight to give attackers a backdoor into your whole network. And in this case, it exposed sensitive donor information, caused this organization significant financial and reputational damage.
Wow, that's awful.
It goes to show that it can happen to anyone. No one is immune to these threats.
That's a good point. So it's not just about protecting our own data, it's about fostering this culture of cybersecurity awareness.
Exactly.
Within our workplaces, our communities.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our cybersecurity deep dive today.
I think so.
This has been incredibly informative. Thank you so much for guiding us through this digital minefield.
It's been my pleasure.
I feel much more prepared to navigate the online world safely and securely.
That's what we like to hear. Remember, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay safe out there.